Hey there, welcome to a new video. In today's video, we're going to be talking about what podcast hosts are looking for, but they're not telling you. If you're new to the channel, my name is Zachary Bernard. I'm the founder of We Future PR. We are a leading podcasting agency that's booked over 1,500 podcast appearances for clients and leverage these to help them build real authority and credibility. If you want someone to handle the entire process for you to getting you booked on podcasts, check out the description. There's going to be a couple links for you. But with that being said, let's jump into the video. So a couple things that we're going to be covering today is going to be the two key factors, the fit, the promotion aspect of things. So what podcast hosts are actually evaluating before deciding to book you on their show, the truth about a good fit and why that's actually different for every single podcast, the behind the scenes of how podcast hosts actually vet the guests, and we're also going to be talking about why relationships in podcasting matter so much. So the first thing that happens when a podcast host receives a pitch from you or they are considering a guest, they're going to be asking themselves two questions. First one, is this person a good fit for my audience? Are they actually going to provide value to my audience beyond what's already on the podcast? Second, are they actually going to promote the podcast? They're going to look at your social media, see that if you're going on other people's podcasts, if you're sharing it or you're promoting the episode, this is very important. Will you actively share, tag the podcast host, and drive your audience to the show to drive more traffic? So some guests, the first thing they think about is, I need to talk more about my business. But the good guests are going to flip that script completely. Most guests are going to lead with their offer, their products, services, their company, try to be very promotional about the work that they do because they think that's what they're supposed to do. But the best guests are going to be the ones that focus on providing value, educating people, giving their insights without trying to overly sell people. So again, the question, are you a good fit for their audience? So they're going to be looking at guests for their expertise, their value, their story, and they want to make sure that it aligns with what their audience cares about and what they actually are looking for. And a lot of people are going to think, oh, they're going to look at the pitch, they're going to see the amazing accomplishments, and then based on that, they're going to decide if they want me on the show. But that couldn't be farther from the truth. Most podcast hosts, they're going to go through a due diligence process that evolves beyond just looking at the pitch, and it's very important that you have all your ducks in a row. So some of them are going to look at your past interview, they're going to look at your content, some of them might even schedule a pre-interview. We see that pretty common with clients that we work with, where they're going to ask for a 10-15 minute conversation before deciding to book the interview. The reason behind that is they want to make sure that there is a fit, there is alignment to be on the show, and obviously it's going to serve for a good podcast. We've had some clients that they're going to go in the pre-interview, both people agree it's not a good fit. That's fine, but you just need to be aware of that podcasters do want to make the due diligence to consider someone and make sure that they actually are getting a good guest on the show. So the first thing your profile should be displaying is that you're serious and you understand how to deliver value. And again, it's really important to understand the differentiation between what is a good guest at different podcast hosts. One of the things that we've done over time whenever we pitch a podcast and maybe our client is not a good fit is we want to better understand who their ideal guest is. And oftentimes, a lot of these podcasts are going to come back to us with a very specific guest profile saying like, hey, these are actually the exact people we are looking for. If you have other people, send them our way. We'll gladly have them on the show. But for anyone else, they're obviously not going to be a good fit. So you want to keep that in mind. Some podcasts are just not going to be a good fit for you because they're not interested in having guests like you. So you want to be a bit more strategic when you go about pitching these podcasts. It's going to vary per podcast. Some podcasts are going to prioritize people that have a very strong following, their online visibility, they're going to help drive a lot of traffic. And then some may just look at your search results, see that you've built a $10 million company, even if you're very under the radar, and they're going to be like, oh, that's great. This person knows what they're talking about. Let's have them on the show, even if you don't have a major following. I can tell you from experience that we've worked with clients that have almost zero to none social media presence or even website in some cases, but we've still had them on podcasts because they've had some good accomplishments, they've had a good story, and they had value to provide to an audience. So again, it's going to vary very heavily for the podcast. So it's not just about being interesting, it's also about being relevant. But the real order that what happens whenever you send a pitch to a podcast host, how they're going to consider you. First thing they're going to look at, your pitch email. They're going to see if it's relevant, and then they're going to make a first a first impression on you. The second thing, they're going to look at your media kit. So whenever you're pitching a podcast host, what you want to do is you want to include a media kit at the bottom or a podcast one sheet. What that is, it is a very simple asset that has a bit more context on you or has some links to places that you've been, your picture, your bio, topics that you can talk about, angles. It's like your calling card, like your business calling card with everything that's really cool about you. A good example comparison could be a personal branding website that you have. Obviously, you want to showcase all the amazing stuff about you. It's the same thing for the podcast one sheet, but you send it as a PDF. A lot of podcast hosts, if you don't have one, they might ask you for one. So that's probably something you want to consider to make sure they do have one whenever you go pitch podcasts. What they're going to do afterwards, they're typically going to look you up. So they're going to look at Google, they're going to see if you have any past podcast appearances, who you are, what you've done, and they're going to look at your social media presence, as mentioned. And again, past appearances is a pretty big one. If they see that you've never been on a podcast, that could be a factor why they might not want to have you, because they're betting on you, hopefully being someone that's not going to waste the time of their audience or their time if you end up botching the entire interview. Hopefully, following the channel here, you've learned a couple of things and you'll be able to do a great interview, but you do want to keep that in mind here. So again, podcast hosts also, they might review your past interview to see how you speak, how you deliver yourself. I can tell you from experience, we've had a lot of podcasts that we go to pitch, and one of the things they ask is, do you have any past podcast appearances? I want to know like how he speaks, how he presents himself. And that's something not a lot of people talk about, but it's very important. So if you've never been on podcasts before, one other thing I could also recommend you is that you start posting some content on LinkedIn so people are able to refer to that content, see how you speak, how you present yourself. So it's much more easier when you go and pitch podcasts, because they know like, okay, Zach here knows how to deliver a like relevant video content post or anything like that, just looking at his LinkedIn. So they're going to do that same assumption that if you know how to do good video content, you can probably have a good podcast conversation. And then obviously pre-interview calls, they're also going to assess your promotion and audience if you have a good social media following. But again, very depending on the podcast. So we talked about this earlier, but again, building a media kit that does the selling for you. So a well-crafted media kit is going to be like a branded asset that again, for hosts, instantly it's going to bring confidence in wanting to book you. Think of it as, again, as like a highlight, everything about you that they need as well to make it very convenient for them in one place. Again, it's similar to like a personal branding website where you have some headshots, some speaker photo, a bio, picture, niche, audience relevance, past appearances, even speaking in person. If you have past speaking experience in person, that does wonder. It shows that an event planner or conference organizer had a lot of trust in you because their job may be dependent on it in booking you. So they had you on. And if you were speaking in person in front of a crowd, you probably know how to speak efficiently. So that's a good one here. And then specific topics that you can talk about. If you're a big one, talk about the social media sites that you have, your newsletter. And then if you have any quantify accomplishments or client results, add those in there too. And giving you a very simple, it's more like topically and like general like title, industry, space specific here, but a real world example of their perfect in alignment is, for example, you have a podcast that's a faith-based business show for Christian entrepreneur. And then the guest could be yourself. You are a Christian entrepreneur who actively integrates faith into business routine. So the topic could be how to build a business while staying rooted in your faith during busy seasons. So it's like very specific. You're resonating with the audience. You can provide value on both sides of the equation. It's a clear alignment. Like that's going to pass the sniff test, like number one. And then number two might be obviously you look into social media following, how you conduct yourself. But this would be a good fit of a podcast that you would pitch. And then when the fit is in there, a good example of a mismatch is when a guest pitches a business, a general business topic around like the 5 tips for scaling your startup for a faith-based show or like business show. You want to make it more specific again. The content might be solid, but there's no connection to the audience's value here. It's very important. And the fix is you would want to research the show, listen to past episode, understand what the audience actually cares about, and craft your pitch around their world, not yours. Anytime you are pitching a podcast, it's about them, the value they can provide to them. It's not about you. You want to remember that. Same thing applies if you're pitching a conference or anything like that. You're trying to phrase the entire pitch around this is the value I will provide to you and your audience. This is why you should have me on. It's not about this is how great I am. This is why you should have me on. That's not how it works. And then a couple things that will have hosts say no. So one of the things you might not believe is hosts do actually say no to podcast guests when they're being pitched. First one, couple red flags. If you're too self-promotional, if you're pitching your product more than your insights, that's going to raise some red flags. And the hosts are going to be able to see that if they listen to some of your past podcast appearances. The hosts want a valuable conversation, not a sales call being promoted on their podcast. If you have a non-reputable brand, that's another one. If someone looks you up, there's inconsistency, it's unprofessional, maybe you don't have the best of reputation, that's not going to be too much of an appealing decision for them to make to want to have you on. If you don't have any social media presence, again, that might be like, oh, they're not going to be able to promote the episode, maybe that's not really worth it. I'm not saying that it's going to be a deal breaker, but it's definitely a factor where some podcast hosts are going to say no, or they're going to pass on you. And then if you don't have any past podcast appearances, a bit similar. I did mention as well, if you have a good media kit, if you post some video content on LinkedIn, that will help you a little bit. So when they look at you, they can see you, they can evaluate how you speak, you present yourself. But again, if you don't have too many podcast appearances, you will have to start getting on a few before you can work your way up to like the bigger and like more relevant podcasts. But the most important one is, will you actually promote the podcast? So this is probably the most overlooked part, and it's exactly why a lot of podcast hosts get frustrated, because I cannot tell you how many times that we've seen people go on a podcast, not promote it, and then we have to tell them like, hey, you do have to promote it. 50% of the equation is getting on the podcast, 50% is leveraging it. I say that to so many clients, and it's true for a reason. So you want to make sure that you promote the podcast. So promotion is really like part of the deal. Like hosts are going to drive traffic to their podcast, but they do expect you to drive traffic as well. So it's very important, and it also helps to build better relationship, which means more recurring appearances, referral partnerships, client customers, all that fun stuff. But first, you want to make sure that you share the episode. You want to repurpose the content. Most podcasters are going to give you some content. I know for our clients, we give them the content so they can directly use it, but repurpose the content that you can then use on your social. Leave a review. It takes literally 5 seconds. It shows a lot of love to the podcast host. They're going to love that. And then stay connected with the podcast host. On LinkedIn, try to engage, like, comment, repost whenever you can. And then that can lead to better relationships with, again, can lead to recurring appearances, can lead to referral partnerships, clients, and all that stuff here. So the promotional problem that a lot of podcasts do not talk about is the frustration of hosts preparing for like hours, making sure that they have an amazing interview. They're even like paying like an editor to edit their podcast to make sure everything is good to go, only for a guest to go on their show, keep it more of a transactional opportunity, and then not share the podcast. That's a big no-no. You do not want to do that. You want to make sure to share the podcast as much as possible. You want to return the favor. They've gotten you on their podcast for a reason. They're giving you the stage, probably going to promote the fact you're with the conference. You want to do the same thing for podcasts. It's not different whatsoever. And the impact, the reach and the impact is going to be greater if the guest actually shares the episode. If you do not, the episode's going to underperform, and the host is going to remember that. They're not going to get you on, again on their show. Like, remember that. And again, the expectation that podcast hosts have is they want guests to treat the episode like it's their own content. They want to make sure that they share it everywhere. They're tagging the show, they're driving real traffic, they're engaging. That's basically part of the agreement whenever you're going on a podcast. Like, hey, I'm going to go on your show. I'm going to obviously make sure to share it so we can get more people listen to my episode and your podcast. So a couple things to make yourself desired as a podcast guest. So I'm going to list like 7. Some of them are not like deal breakers, but they're obviously going to help you when it comes to pitching time. The first one, if you have a newsletter, that's amazing. It really helps you because if you're able to share the podcast on your newsletter, you're able to quantify number of subscribers, members that you have on your newsletter. That's going to be more appealing to a podcast host. If you can showcase some quick accomplishments like impact that you've had for clients, data, metrics that can be quantified, again, that works well. We're going to be, when anyone sees numbers, they're going to be able to like resonate a bit more versus just like text. I mean, if I see a number, that's obviously going to have the focus of my attention. Like if I see like $10 million, like directly I'm going to focus on that. I'm going to be like, oh, like what is that? Same impact that we want to have with podcasters whenever we pitch them. If you have your own podcast and you're open to doing a podcast swap, I can tell you we have a lot of podcasts we pitch. They ask, hey, is your client open to doing a guest swap? And a lot of our clients are, because sometimes they actually do have a podcast and it makes it very easy. Like, cool, we'll make a swap, we'll promote each other, perfect. And then in some cases, even like mentioning that you'll put the appearance on your website with a link to the show or like the host's website, it's going to help them with SEO, getting like a backlink. And some hosts really appreciate that. So open to sending like samples. That's a less common one that I've seen, but we have some clients that are more like B2C where they might send a product to the podcast host to test. Or you might have a client that's B2B that has a book. You can send the book to the podcast host to read before the actual interview. That's like a little like value. It's like, yeah, like if you want to have me as a guest, like I'll send you the book, you can check it out and we can just go from there. And they're not going to feel obligated to have you on their show, but they're going to feel much more compelled because you're giving them something for free. And then oftentimes they'll want to return the favor here. Again, if you have past speaking experience, that's a big one. If you have a professional setup, so microphone, good camera, good lighting, that's a big plus. Some podcast hosts are going to ask and be very particular, saying like, hey, he needs to have a wired in USB. We want to make sure this is very of quality. If you have that set up, that's going to be a big plus for podcast hosts. And again, what podcast hosts are going to look at first is they're going to look at your email, they're going to look at your media kit. It's really like your chance to shine, and it's like a branded asset to convince them that you're a good fit. And then you want to make sure you have some pictures of you speaking on podcasts, you going on stage, showcase your social media following, and also add clear, relevant topics for the audience, a bio picture. But they're also going to look at your Google, social media, past speaking. They're going to look at your entire digital presence, to put it very simply. And some red flags that kill the booking as well. Too promotional, if you don't have too much of a reputable brand, no past experience speaking, or if you don't have an active social media presence. That can impact that a little bit here. So again, the big point is you want to make sure that you're showcasing yourself as being serious about podcasts. You want to repurpose the podcast, you want to showcase it, you want to tag, promote the podcast. So treat the episode and the conversation that you have as a partnership, not just like a checkbox and a transactional relationship. If you can do that, you will go a long way. And the guests that get booked again and again and again are going to be the ones that tag the podcast hosts, that engage, that treat the episode as their own content, like if it was like their own podcast. You want to make sure that you align your pitch to their audience. You want to match to the topic of the show, the audience, and not just your agenda and your company and the services you offer. You want to promote a lot, very important, and then you want to show up prepared. Don't just try to like wing the podcast with absolutely no preparation. Podcast hosts are going to see that. Trust me. But yeah, that's it. My name is Zach Bernard again. I'm the founder of WeFuture PR. If you've enjoyed this video, make sure to like, comment, subscribe. And if you want to learn more about getting booked on podcasts without you needing to do anything whatsoever, check out the link in the bio. Click the link, wefuture.com, book a call, and we'll talk to you soon.